Greetings, Mansoray79 here, and I'm back with another deck profile video for the Cardfight Vanguard trading card game. In today's video, the deck profile I'm going to be doing one for is the standard formats, Dragon Empires, Dragonic Overlord, and Dragonic Overlord The End. Alright then, let's get started. Alright, first off, the Ride deck. For the cards in this Ride deck, we have Grade 0, Lizard Runner Undu. Grade 1, the Embodiment of Armor, Bar. Grade 2, Dragon Knight Nehalem, and Grade 3, Dragonic Overlord. The starting unit, Grade 0, Lizard Runner Undu. Like any other starting unit in the D standard format, he features only one skill. When written on top of, if you're the second to go to Grade 1, you get to draw a card. The Grade 1, Embodiment of Armor, Bar. As a Vanguard, his skill is, when written on top of by Dragon Knight Nehalem, by playing one Counterblast, you can search your deck for any Grade 1 unit and add it to your hand. Ideally, most players are known to use this first skill to add a perfect guard to their hand. For example, Twin Buckler Dragon. This skill can also be used to add other Grade 1s to your hand, specifically ones that you prefer to use for your strategies, offensively or defensively. The Grade 2, Dragon Knight Nehalem. As a Vanguard, his skill is, when written on top of by Dragonic Overlord, you can superior call Dragon Knight Nehalem from your soul to the rear guard. Ideally, this first skill will allow you to secure yourself a Dragon Knight Nehalem in your rear guard, whose second skill, which will be later be explained, will support your Vanguard Overlord later in the game. The Grade 3, Dragonic Overlord, one of the main cards in this deck. His skills are, as a Vanguard or a rear guard, when attacking an opponent's rear guard, they cannot guard this unit's attack with cards from their hand. So as long as the attack target is a rear guard, Dragonic Overlord's attack will almost be more or less unblockable. And then the second skill of Dragonic Overlord, as a Vanguard, once per turn, after its attack hits, by counterblasting 1 and discarding 1, you can restand your Vanguard Overlord at the cost of reducing its drive check by 1. So overall, this second skill is more or less a trademark skill for Dragonic Overlords who specialize in restanding the Vanguard and attacking multiple times the Vanguard. And with that, we've just about covered the Ride deck. Next, let's go to the main deck. For the main deck, let's start off with the Grade 1 lineup. For the Grade 1 lineup of this deck, we have 3 Embodiment of Armor, Bars. 2 Dragon Monk, Gojos. And 4 Twin Buckler Dragons. The Grade 1, Embodiment of Armor, Bar. His second skill is, as a rear guard, once per turn, when your Vanguard's attack hits, Bar gains plus 5,000 power till the end of the turn. So, as long as your Vanguard's attack manages to land even one hit, Bar skill will give him plus 5,000 power, effectively making him either a 13,000 power attacker or a 13,000 power booster from the back row. Ideally, Bar is a decent power unit for Overlord decks. And then here's the Grade 1, Dragon Monk Gojo. His skill is, as a rear guard, after boosting a successful attack from your Vanguard, you can retreat Gojo from your rear guard and countercharge 1. So his skill is mainly used to countercharge your damage zone and to preserve your counterblast for more skills that require counterblast. And his skill is, well, one of the few cards in the Dragon Empire D standard format decks that let you countercharge that's compatible with Overlord decks. So, though not a necessary card to have given the other options for countercharging, Gojo is still a decent card to have for your Dragonic Overlord decks. The Great One, Sentinel, Perfect Guard, Twin Buckler Dragon. Like every other Perfect Guard in the Cardfight Vanguard trading card game, the activation and skill for Perfect Guards is still the same. When used to guard, by discarding 1 card from your hand, you can block 1 enemy attack. And like every other booster obtained Perfect Guard for the D standard format, he features an additional effect of his Perfect Guard skill. When used to guard, if you have less than 2 cards in your hand, you won't have to pay the hand discard cost to use Twin Buckler's Perfect Guard skill. So for this second effect that goes along with the Perfect Guard, you more or less can, if you're pushed into a desperate situation where you have 2 or less cards in hand when you guard with Twin Buckler, you won't have to pay any cost to activate a Perfect Guard for your opponent's attacks. And with that, we've just about covered the Grade 1 lineup. Next, let's go to the Grade 2 lineup. For the Grade 2 lineup of this deck, we have 4 Burning Horn Dragons, 3 Flare Strike Dragons, 2 Dragon Knight Nihilums, 2 Berserk Dragons, and 3 Steel Bullet Duststorm Ethans. The Grade 2 Burning Horn Dragon. An ideal card to have for your D standard format Dragonic Overlord decks. For his skills are, the first skill, when called onto the rearguard circle, by paying 1 counterblast, you can check the top 7 cards of your deck for a Overlord card and add it to your hand. And if a card was not added by this skill, you can countercharge 1. So for this first skill, Burning Horn is more or less the D standard format's remake of the V standard format's Ignorant Dragon. For when called by paying a cost, you can check the top cards of your deck to possibly add an Overlord to your hand for riding or persona riding or for calling or simply for using his hand cost as well. And one of the best parts about this skill is, in the off chance you fail to add an Overlord to your hand by this skill, you can countercharge 1, which more or less lets you have a refund for in case the skill fails, which by my opinion is a pretty good effect to add in the end. And the second skill of Burning Horn Dragon, when your Vanguard named Overlord attacks, Burning Horn gains plus 5,000 power till the end of the turn. So like I mentioned before, this second skill is more or less makes Burning Horn a D standard format remake of V standard format's Ignorant Dragon. For this second skill allows him to gain power whenever your Vanguard Overlord attacks, which works well since, as you know, Overlords specialize in restanding and attacking multiple times. So, for example, with Dragonic Overlord and Dragonic Overlord the End, whose skills let you stand your Vanguard once after attacking, enabling 2 attacks. So, under ideal conditions, you'll be able to give 10,000 power to Burning Horn Dragon, as long as you meet the skills requirements to do so. Overall, a pretty good card to have in your Overlord decks. The Grade 2, Flare Strike Dragon, a promo card from the Koro Koro Comic Monthly Magazine. Though most people online said that this card isn't really that great to use, by my opinion and personal experience, Flare Strike Dragon is a pretty good card to have for your D standard format decks, especially for Overlords. For his skill is, when called onto the rear guard, by counterblasting 1, you can give your Vanguard 10,000 power till the end of the turn, which is a pretty good skill to have for Dragonic Overlord decks, particularly the End, whose specialty is attacking multiple times your Vanguard. For the extra 10,000 power will give your Dragonic Overlord the End a major attack advantage in both his first and second attacks. So, like I said before, by my opinion, Flare Strike Dragon is a good card to have in Dragonic Overlord the End decks. Dragon Knight, Nehalem, grade 2. His second skill is, by Soul Blasting 1, you can give your Nehalem who paid for the cost of this skill and your Vanguard Overlord plus 5,000 power till the end of the turn. So this second skill, like Flare Strike Dragon before, is a good way to increase your Overlord's attack power for his multiple attacks and restanding. And like I mentioned before in the Ride deck, his first skill lets you Superior call him from the soul after riding Overlord, so you're pretty much guaranteed to have a rear guard who will increase your Vanguard's attack power by riding on top of him or calling him from your hand. And probably one of the other best parts of Nehalem is that his power-up skill is stackable. Though his second skill is only active once per turn, if the off chance you manage to draw additional Nehalems and call them to the rear guard, and if you have the Soul Blast cost to pay for it, you can activate multiple Nehalems separately to continue stacking power to your Vanguard Overlord, which I've done plenty of times in my D standard format decks. So, like I mentioned, Dragon Knight Nehalem, good card to have as a Vanguard and a rear guard in D standard format Overlord decks. The grade 2, Berserk Dragon. His skill is, when attacking, if your Vanguard is an Overlord, he gets plus 5,000 power. And, by choosing to pay a counterblast of 1, you can retire one of your opponent's grade 2 or less rear guards. So, basically, Berserk Dragon serves as either a 15,000 point attacker for Overlords or a rear guard retirer by paying 1 counterblast. So, mainly, I use Berserk Dragon to fill my front line with enough attackers to pressure my opponent with damage, and in case my opponent has any key cards they want to use in their rear guard, Berserk Dragon will help me clear out the board. So, though I only played 2 Berserk Dragons, by my opinion, it's still a good number to have, and Berserk Dragon still a good card to have in the updated Dragonic Overlord decks. And then, the grade 2, Steel Bullet Duststorm Ethan. His skill is, as a rear guard, when your Vanguard's attack hits, by retreating Ethan from your own rear guard, you can draw 1 card and countercharge 1. So basically, this guy is a improved version of the D standard formats, Dragon Monk Gojo. For unlike Gojo, Ethan's countercharge skill can be active regardless of where you put him on the rear guard, while Gojo requires him to be boosting your having successfully attacked Vanguard. And also the additional ability of being able to draw 1 card with countercharging. By my opinions, Ethan is a good card to have, either as a replacement for Dragon Monk Gojo in D standard format, or a good card to increase your hand, or to work alongside Gojo to keep your counterblast ready for you to use in your later skills. And with that, we've just about covered the grade 2 line of this deck. Next, let's go to the grade 3 lineup. For the grade 3 line of this deck, we have 3 Dragonic Overlords and 4 Dragonic Overlord the Ends. As I mentioned in the Ride deck section of this video, I already mentioned Dragonic Overlord skills and other stuff, so I'm not going to mention it. I'm going to go straight to explaining Dragonic Overlord the End instead. The grade 3, Dragonic Overlord the End, one of the other main cards in this deck along with Dragonic Overlord. His first skill is, during your turn, if you have a Dragonic Overlord in your soul, the End gains plus 5,000 power, and his drive check cannot be reduced. So basically, it's more or less like a D standard format counterpart of Cross Rides, for if you ride Dragonic Overlord the End on top of Dragonic Overlord, which is, like I said before, technically a cross ride. He gains 5,000 power during your turn, and his drive check cannot be reduced by his own restanding skill. So in both of the End's attacks, you'll be able to drive check 2 cards of each attack. And then the second skill of Dragonic Overlord the End, as a Vanguard, once per turn, after attacking, by paying the cost of 1 counterblast and discarding 2 cards, you can restand your Vanguard, but you have to reduce its drive check by 1. So, unlike Dragonic Overlord, who requires his own attack to hit in order to restand, the End will let you restand your Vanguard regardless if the attack hits or not. So, you're guaranteed to have 2 Vanguard attacks as long as you pay the costs. And despite the skill saying that you must reduce your own drive check by 1 after restanding, like I mentioned before with the first skill, the Cross Ride skill, so long as you've got Overlord in your soul, with the additional 5,000 power, his own skill will also prevent the restanding skill's drive check reduction. So overall, the End is still a pretty good card to have, regardless of whatever limitations, but because the additional abilities and other support cards more than make up for it and still make the End a effective card to have in D standard and potentially premium format decks. And with that, we've just about covered it for the grade 3 lineup. Next, let's go to the trigger lineup. For the trigger line of this deck, we have 1. Overtrigger, Dragon Deity of Resurgence, Dragvita. 4. Burning Flail Dragons, critical triggers. 4. Conduct Spark Dragons, critical triggers. 3. Burning Flail Dragons, draw triggers. And 4. Stealth Fiends, Amaviras. The Overtrigger, grade 0, Dragon Deity of Resurgence, Dragvita. The Dragon Empire's Overtrigger. Still, like I mentioned before with my previous card explanations, my deck specializes in restanding with Overlords, so by my opinion, Dragvita is still a pretty good card to have in the D standard format and premium standard, the premium formats when playing with my Dragon Empire and Kagero decks. For his skill is, like any other Overtrigger, when revealed in a drive check or damage check, you can choose 1 unit on your field and it gets 100 million power till the end of the turn and you draw a card. So along with the absolute power boost and the extra 1 card, there's the second ability of Dragvita. When revealed during your drive check, you can stand your Vanguard. So this second ability works really well with Dragonic Overlord, whose specialty is restanding with the Vanguard and multiple attacks with the Vanguard. So overall, the Overtrigger is still a great card, despite only being able to have 1 in your deck. The grade 0, critical trigger, Burning Flail Dragon. His skill is, as a rearguard, after boosting, you can move Burning Flail from your rearguard to the soul and give 1 unit on your field plus 2,000 power. So Burning Flail skill more or less lets you restock your soul by using him as a booster from the back row and giving another card in your field additional 2,000 power, like perhaps your Vanguard or another rearguard. So mainly I use this card to restock my soul for Dragonite Nehalem's skills. But there's also other options for this card, since it's still a pretty good defender with its 15,000 point shield. the grade 0, draw trigger, Flare Veil Dragon. His skill is, on the Guardian Circle, if your Vanguard is a grade 3 or higher, Flare Veil's shield gets plus 5,000 power. So he more or less serves as a 10,000 point defender as long as your Vanguard's grade 3 or above, which makes him a better defender than most standard draw triggers who only provide you 5,000 point shields. So Flare Veil Dragon, pretty good improvement to the draw triggers for these standard formats. And then the grade 0 heal triggers, Stealth Fiend Amavira. Her skill is, when placed in the Guardian Circle, if the attacking unit Amavira is blocking has attacked 2 or more times during the turn, Amavira gets plus 15,000 shield till the end of the battle. So Amavira's skill is more or less a good way for you to block any enemy attacks that more or less have attacked more than once or twice during the opponent's turn. She's by my opinion, a good card to use against opponents who play Bruce, Bastion, or perhaps fellow Overlord decks. Basically, she's a defender for cards and opponents' decks that specialize in restanding and attacking like Overlord. So, despite only having 10,000 shields for her skill and the conditions that require for it to activate or more or less make up for the slight drop in base defensive power. And with that, we've just about covered the trigger line of this deck. For the trigger line of this deck, like I mentioned before, we have 1 over trigger, 8 critical triggers, 3 draw triggers, and 4 heal triggers. And with that, we just about covered the trigger lineup completely. And we've just about covered pretty much the cards and the card amounts and skills of the deck build. And so for the main strategy I use in this deck, usually like before, it's mainly riding once at a time to Bar, using his own skill after riding Dragonic Nehalem to add a great one, perhaps a perfect guard or any other great one to support his strategy after riding Nehalem. Riding Overlord, superior calling Nehalem, keeping him in the back row to serve as a power up for Dragonic Overlord. Possibly calling other bars to aid in my rear guard attacks. Maybe even using Gojo or Ethan to preserve my counterblast, or using Ethan's bonus to increase the hand. And then keeping Burning Horn as a front row attacker, since his effect can let you stack his power when you attack with Overlord. And then, by staving off enemy attacks after riding Great Tree, the next turn, cross-riding to Dragonic Overlord the end, using the Nehalem's skill to increase his own power, and then using Flare Strike Dragon skill to increase the end's power by 10,000, using the Nehalem's skill to increase it by another 5,000, not to mention the cross-ride effect of Dragonic Overlord. The end lets him get another 5,000 power as long as you've got Overlord in the soul. Overall, under ideal conditions, if you've cross-ridden with Nehalem with a skill, you'll have guaranteed yourself a 10,000 point boost. With Flare Strike Dragon, you'll guarantee yourself a 20,000 power boost, or at least a 15,000 power boost, as long as you've got 2 of the required cards in the field, 2 or more. So, like I just stated, the main strategy is to ride the ride line like normal from Undo, Bar, Nehalem, Overlord, then the end, using support cards like Burning Horn Dragon, Ethan, Nehalem, and of course, Flare Strike Dragon. And with that, I just about covered it for the main strategy of this deck. So now I've pretty much explained the cards, card amount, skills, and strategy of this deck. And so first off, I want to say thank you to the viewers for watching today's video, and please look forward to any more videos I plan to upload again in the near future. And I also hope you show your support by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing to my videos and channel. And with that, I say goodbye and see you all soon.